So I'll just go ahead and jump right in. Hopefully everybody can see me. Well, not see me, excuse me, but see my slides. There were some technical issues. I think there's some type of gene in me that just does not work well with technology. So I apologize for that bloodline. But we will go ahead and jump right in. Um, let's see. If for any reason you can't hear me or see my slides, please, you're always welcome to raise your hand. You can chat in the box, like Ms. Thomas said, and we will definitely get to those questions. I love a good Q&A. It's an opportunity for me to both learn and to teach. And for that, it gets me. I love the Q&A. If you want to know, I definitely will be able to inform you as it relates to transition. So I wanted to sort of start with the numbers, the demographics that we're looking at. And so what you're seeing here is the four chemo transition demographics for FY23, fiscal year 23. We have not gotten the numbers on 24 just yet because we're still in 24. So I'll just share what last year's numbers look like. If you can see the top block, it says ranks of transitioned soldiers. And the biggest number, of course, is that 54% is going to be that what I call junior enlisted from that E1 to E4. And so those are going to be soldiers that are transition. And I use the term soldiers only because this is a military and this is an Army installation. And so we service more soldiers than we do any other clients, though we do service all military service members, regardless of branch. We just primarily deal more with soldiers. So if you hear me saying soldiers, it's not specific to soldiers, that's just who we serve. So when it talks about ranks of transition soldiers, that 54% is that junior enlisted. So with that junior enlisted, a good amount of them probably aren't coming out with an advanced degree, and we'll kind of get into that a little bit later about the degrees. A lot of them are looking for entry level positions. And so because of that, there is going to be a definite hesitation when it comes to healthcare because me coming out of the Army back in 2016, anything dealing with medical or healthcare seemed very high ordered in that it made me seem like I had to be a doctor. So I had to have these millions of degrees in order to work in the healthcare industry. And I have learned coming out of the Army and working in this field that is just not true. There are definitely positions that are available in the healthcare industry that does not necessarily require a major, master's, PhD, doctorate. But there are positions that are entry level that these soldiers are able to gather when they are getting out of the Army. So like I said, that big number is that 54% is that E1 to E4. Then when you look at 30% of that E5 to E6, those are going to be your NCOs. So they're going to definitely have management background. They're going to have logistical background, and leadership and organization background. And then we go into the senior NCOs. And if for anyone doesn't know what NCO mean, that stands for non-commissioned officer or those who are enlisted. So E anything are going to be enlisted non-commissioned officers. So we had that E7 to E9, which is sergeant first class all the way up to E9, which is a command sergeant major, and then we go into the officers. And if you see the officers' numbers start to dwindle, with warrant officer 1 to 5, we're looking at 2% that come out, and then 4%, and so on and so forth. When we look at the ages of those, of those who are getting out, we look at that 17 to 24 is 44, but the highest number of soldiers that we're getting out are going to be that 25 to 34. And if you understand sort of how the retirement works in the Army, retirement is usually going to start at 38 and above because that's usually soldiers will join at the age of 18. I have known those who joined at 17, so 37 they were at their retirement, but usually 38 and above. And as you can see, our largest number are from 25 to 34, so they're not retiring unless there's a medical retirement, in which case they do get their benefits, or if they are retiring, then it's going to be that 35 to 44, which is 12%. Now, when we look on the other side, and I do want to share that with you, that MSA, what MSA stands for is that Metropolitan Statistical Area. So as you can see, the top 10 transition that MSAs from Fort Campbell is Clarksville. They're going to Clarksville, which of course is Tennessee, and we're definitely servicing that Tennessee Hospital Association. So that's 1486. And then when you look down, you scroll down a little bit, the top six transition from installation to Fort Campbell is 1,500. So as you can see, this is a booming area. Clarksville itself and the surrounding area is one of the fastest growing cities. And so because of that, we have worked closely with workforce development councils here in the Clarksville area to promote the industry in Clarksville and in Tennessee. When I was first starting the slide deck, was looking at hospitals in Hopkinsville in Kentucky, and the reason why is because, of course, that is our area as well. But quickly remember that we are servicing the Tennessee Hospital Association, the workforce development. So, but I wanted you to just to get a picture of the numbers and see kind of where we were in terms of that demographic, in terms of those soldiers who are getting out of the Army and where they're going to be, where they're going to live. And a lot of that post-Army location is really dependent upon many factors to include finances, to include education, what it is they want to do, where it is the jobs are. So, you know, if a person wants to be work in the I don't know, surfboard industry, they're not going to be really lucrative in an interior space. They're going to want to be more on the coast. And so a lot of soldiers are going to where the jobs are. So we want to provide that opportunity. We want to provide that outlet right here in the great state of Tennessee. I say great state of Tennessee because of course, I was born on Fort Campbell on the Tennessee side. So I definitely love our state and want to do whatever we can to get viable candidates into that field. I want to share just a little bit more numbers with you, and then we'll kind of get a little bit more into what we do. So this graph kind of gives you an overview of where soldiers are going when they get out of the Army in terms of that skill set, that training, just that knowledge base. So if you look at the highest number here is that 1,727 or 41% are going to go into operations, project management, and physical security. Now that number, that 41% directly correlates, and I'm going to go back just a little bit back up to where I said the ranks of transition soldiers, that E1 to E5. So if we're looking at that graph, we're seeing that a good number of the soldiers are going into operations, project management, physical security. Now, I won't go over all of them, but I'll look right across from that on that orange, and there you see healthcare, which is only at 8%. And that number seems a little low, and I think it's low because of what I had mentioned earlier. When I got out of the Army, the thoughts of working in a hospital, I would have loved to the opportunity to connect with patients, the opportunity to learn a skill or a craft within that industry would have been great for me. I love customer service. I love being able to help people, but the idea of healthcare was daunting because of the requirements, and I knew that I just did not have those requirements. So that is probably the mentality of a lot of soldiers that were getting out in that age range of 25 to 34, or that rank of E1 to E4. And I myself got out when I was an E4, so I fall right into that statistic. But there are also other numbers, percentages that affect sort of that outside post-army or post-military service position. So if you look at the numbers here, just on Fort Campbell alone in fiscal year 23, 4,211 soldiers exited Fort Campbell. Okay, so when we break that down to 35% remain in the local area, which is a really good number, 61 of those persons are married. So why is that important? Because this is not just that said soldier's transition, but it's also the transition of family members who have been in the Army with their spouses for 20, from 4 to 20 years, who have moved around the world and who have been accustomed to a certain type of financial lifestyle. So the reason why I bring up the finances is because that is one of the aspects that definitely affects soldiers and their family is making that transition that can have an effect not just on their pockets, but on their mentality, stress level. A lot of things go into that idea or the anxiety of I'm getting out of the Army, don't know where to go. I'm coming out of a job or a career that took care of me and my family, that was able to provide housing or housing allowance, that allowed us to travel, that gave us 30 paid vacation days a year. So we're coming out of the Army with so many benefits and services that we're really just trying to find a job that can at least sustain our current quality of lifestyle, as well as being able to be in a position where we can flourish, grow, and have really good potential, future growth potential. And why not healthcare? Why not healthcare be that industry? I would love to make this 8% a lot larger, but it is going to depend on many factors to include exposure, to include marketing, events, job fairs, getting people in connection with that industry. I will say, and I'm going to go on to the next slide. I will say that a lot of our job here is to prepare and connect. And I'll give you a little overview of sort of what we do as the organization, sort of what our role is in the lives of soldiers and their families. And that is going to be preparing and connecting to ensure that we prepare them by way of training, by way of classes, and that we connect them by way of events, different meetings, job fairs, employer days, and I'll get into that here very shortly. So this is a lot going on in this slide. I do not expect you to read all of this, but I wanted to kind of give you an overview of what the soldiers, what their process is while they're going through the transition assistance program. Now, this program is congressionally mandated, so it is not optional. And so with the non-optional aspect, there are classes that are required. So that's going to be that pre-separation, which is a 2-hour block of instruction that really just goes over our program and it kind of goes over all of the requirements and the classes that the soldier is going to enjoy as they're making that process. We have what's called Army Day, which consists of my transition. So that's managing your transition, how to manage the stress, the rigmarole, how to manage, the all of the important nuts and bolts and those required pieces while making that transition. MOS crosswalk used to be called MOC crosswalk. Well, I'm sorry, MOC crosswalk used to be called MOS crosswalk. So as you can imagine, it really talks about how we can connect soldiers based on their current skill set and their training to that outside industry. And so what does that mean? So if we have any 68 series people who have been in the medical field, that MOC crosswalk consists of what's called a gap analysis. And so the gap analysis, and please let me know if we have any questions. If I'm going too fast, I will definitely slow down. But that gap analysis really is as simple as getting a sheet of paper and doing a trifold. And so you're going to have 3 columns. That first column is where are we now? So we're going to ask soldiers to write down where are they now in terms of finances, housing, expenses, debts. Where are they now reconciled? Be it good or bad, it's good to understand and know the status so that we can make changes effective to a successful transition. And then we go to the last column, which is where do we want to be? What does that big picture look like? What is 5, 10 years from now? What does that look like? And then that middle column is going to be the gap. How do we bridge the gap? And so with bridging the gap, we're going to consider concepts like what they have learned, what skill set they already attained, what can go on a good viable resume as they pass it out to different industries and vendors and employers post-Army. And so if this industry, if they are a 68 series and want to continue in the healthcare industry, how can we make those connections? What are the requirements that we need to put in place? What are the warm handovers that we need to put in contact with industry leaders in the healthcare field? Because the reality is there are many people who are interested in continuing their skills in that 68 series, but don't understand or know the opportunities that await them. And so that is my whole point for being here today, is to expose those soldiers that, hey, healthcare is a viable industry. If that's something that you want to get into, we want to definitely facilitate that connection between the service member and that said industry. I won't go crazy into this slide, but I do want to scroll down a little bit to where it says career track. For most soldiers, the career track is optional, and so you can see it's employment, vocational training, higher education, and entrepreneurship. One of the best programs I think that we offer here is called our Career Skills Program. And I'm going to give you some additional services available, but at the very bottom, you'll see where it says Career Skills Program. And this really speaks to that prepared piece. Now, the Career Skills programs have a plethora of training courses, I think over 16 courses that they offer. One of the best is what's called an individual internship. So if a client does not see a class or training opportunity that fits whatever industry they want to get into post-Army, they can create their own internship. It just there are a few more agencies that have to sign off on it. So that's going to be, of course, the company, the industry. So if a soldier wanted to perhaps go into nursing or go into a work, hospital administration, and there was none of that offered through our programs, they can go to a hospital, they can go to a clinic, they can go to an administrative program, and they can say, hey, I want a job shadow, I want to train. Are there training programs available for soldiers getting out? If they find a good program, if they've created their own good program, we will sign off on it. Of course, our chain of command signs off on it, and they're good to go to that program for up to 120 days. And that is their place of duty. That is where they report in the morning, and that is where their training will come from. So if there are if there are hospitals or programs that offer any training programs, we do welcome that. I work really closely with Miss Teresa Myers. She is our Region 1 CSP coordinator. It has been a bit of a challenge getting a medical training programs just due to the time and the requirements that is required for soldiers, or for anyone who were taking those classes. So it has been a struggle to try to fit in a training time period. But as you may know, that a medical training can go, for a year, 2 years before, they are open to positions like, a radiology tech or a phlebotomist, those positions that don't necessarily require a major bachelor's, master's, or a PhD or a doctorate. But even still, those training programs are quite lengthy, and our training programs go up to 6 months. So really just trying to find a program that is going to offer good credentials, perhaps even some kind of job placement, has been a struggle, but that I'm keeping hope alive. And I am hoping that gaining this relationship with you all will help us to find better programs to serve our soldiers as they make this transition. So another thing that we do outside of the prepared piece is the connection piece. So with that, we are tasked to create events that are going to put soldiers in line, right in lockstep with that industry. So we have what's called Employer Days. So if any of you at any point want to come down on a random Wednesday or Thursday, a few things that you'll have the opportunity to go in the classroom and speak to the soldier for about 30 seconds, kind of give a spiel of the organization, to include pay requirements, location to your said organization. And then what happens is during their breaks, they come out and they speak. As you can see in this picture, it gets pretty full. Soldiers are going to come out, speak to all of the employers that are in that atrium area. So we have so many employers who include law enforcement, manufacturing, project management, but one that we don't see often is healthcare. I do have a contact, and I cannot think of his name, but he is with the Department of Health, and I can probably get his name a little later, but he's with the Department of Health, and we were actually having this conversation about 2 months ago. He attended our quarterly job fair, and he realized that he was maybe one of a few medical organizations at the job fair. So we were really having the conversation of how we can make a better point of connecting soldiers to that to that medical healthcare industry post Army. And having an event specialized for healthcare is something that I'm definitely open to and speaks loudly to me, because it helps me to understand that though there are soldiers in here who want to stay in this area, who have circumstances or family who need to stay in this area, but don't have the opportunities or not aware of the opportunities that await them in that medical field. So I do encourage any of you at any point, you could just let us know, and we'll definitely make sure that we can accommodate you. As I was mentioning earlier about our quarterly job fairs, that is our job fairs on a much greater level, on steroids, if you will. So we do these major quarterly events twice a year. Traditionally, in the past few years, it has been in June and October, but of course, it's not necessarily about a month or a day, but more so about the time frame, as long as we have two major quarterly job fairs. And here are the information. Our last one was June 11th and 12th, and our next quarterly job quarterly job fair will be October 8th and 9th. So I do have a shameless plug, and I hope Ms. Thomas does not mind, but here is my flyer. So if any of you all are interested in attending or being a part, participating in that job fair, if you have any positions that are available and open and you feel like you would at least start the networking process or start cultivating some prospective candidates for the industry, I do encourage you to come out, start building that relationship, start shaking hands, and start understanding, if nothing else, what the mentality of that soldier is, where they want to go, what are their aspirations, their goals, to include vacations and family and houses and cars. We have to let them understand that all of the items, the good things that I call life might provide, have to come from somewhere, and that has to come from where are you working, where is the income provided. And so there is where soldiers who may not have even considered healthcare as an option might think, this for me, it checks a few boxes. Like I said, I thought about healthcare getting out. I have the opportunity to service humans, which I love to do. I love people. I love to work with people. Also, it gives me the opportunity to learn the medical health field, and it also gives me the opportunity to grow. So with that, that is something that soldiers want, regardless of what the industry is. But they have not been exposed to a lot of healthcare industries because, as I showed you earlier, we rarely have healthcare personnel at our events. So I welcome you. I welcome you. I welcome you. And we're almost done here. Like I said, I don't want to take too much of your time. And going back a little bit on the career skills program, so when I mentioned that Ms. Teresa Myers is our Region 1 CSP coordinator, is because we have a few regions in the area. And so that are approved with both CSPs and SkillBridge. So if you feel like you might have programs that would be SkillBridge approved, I do encourage you to look into it. If you have questions about that, I would love to connect you with Ms. Teresa Myers. She's out of the office this week. She's on vacation, but she will be back next week, and she enjoys meetings and talking to people just as much as I do. So I know that she would love to have you. But that is the great point of our CSP, is to continue that connection piece, is to allow them to have hands-on opportunities, whatever program they want. They offer VIP welding services, sprinkler fitting, Airstreams, I believe, has a training program. So why not healthcare? Why not have a program that we can create in order for soldiers, if nothing else, to get that hands-on training, to start networking, and to at least understand what that might look like going forward. Perhaps they want to, I know we can't provide a nursing training program, although that would be nice, but perhaps they do want to grow in that field. Perhaps being a medical tech would inspire them to go to nursing school, or inspire them to be a nurse practitioner or a PA, or grow in that industry. And of course, that is what the industry needs, is up and comers. And so that is what we want to provide. We literally want to be that pipeline to outside industries. And as you saw the numbers at the beginning, Fort Campbell, Clarksville area is booming. If you ever come to this area, there is a new neighborhood every day. I don't mean a new house. I'm talking a new neighborhood. And of course, I am exaggerating, but that's the way it feels. We are growing and industries are happening here. And I want to be the first to welcome these soldiers into a medical job fair or a hiring event, or even virtual events where they can at least speak with people within that industry. That is important. These are ways that you can connect with us. This has all of our information. So when I say our, I want to kind of break that down. So Miss Ann Fugate is our transition service manager. She is, for lack of a better term, she's our division chief, and she has been here now since 2021, and does an amazing job of facilitating this whole program. And then you have myself, Anthony White. Melissa Up is my counterpart. So that is her information. mentioned, her and I both kind of work together with employers and planning events. I am the POC for all of the employer events, but her and I work together. I've just taken on this position in March, so I'm still sort of on her coattails within this first year, as she plans these events and sort of trains and cultivates me on how to properly host events that are going to get soldiers with companies or employment post Army. And then Teresa Myers, who I mentioned earlier. She is our CSP coordinator, and she runs a great team of ladies over there at the CSP organization that allow soldiers to take part in those internship, apprenticeships, or on-the-job training. Then there are some dates. We're past a lot of them. I did pass email Miss Thomas a updated PDF of those dates. So the dates that we're looking at now is October 8th and 9th. That's what we're preparing for now. I'm actively reviewing registration forms and making sure that everyone has a table. Then we have our skills program, our career skills program on 6th November. So those are going to be for whatever training programs that you have or you're able to provide. Then I would encourage you to set up a table at that event as well. So that is a little bit of our program. That is what we provide. We are always open to ideas. So when we first initially sat down and had this meeting, I got so excited only because this isn't one of the industries that I feel like we're lacking in this area. And whatever we can do to increase, I'm here for. So whatever marketing, whatever materials that you have, whatever ideas that we can come up with in order to expand this opportunity for soldiers, I'm here for. That is why I'm here. Like I said before, this is my passion. And so I definitely wanted to just give you an overview of sort of what the numbers were, what our program is, and what we definitely want to make sure that we are providing for all service members and their families. So with that being said, I will wrap up from there. I do have, if you have any questions, anything that you would like to ask, I love a good Q&A, so please ask whatever you need to ask. If you want to just type in the chat box, you're welcome to do that as well, and I'll respond there. So I will turn it back over to Miss Thomas, and she will facilitate the Q&A from there, and I'm here to answer any questions that you have.
Thank you, Anthony. This is really great information, and I hope that you all are learning about lots of terms and different things. We in healthcare are very aware of the uniqueness of definitions and things to industry. So thank you for taking the time to explain those. We do have one question in the chat, and then I have several questions, but I did want to just, Anthony, for your knowledge, I know we mentioned we represent the hospitals, but we also share these webinars with many of our partners, and those partners are also on the academic side. So you do have several deans and directors and program coordinators for healthcare training programs on this call as well. Awesome. So if you do come off of mute to ask Anthony a question, please take a moment to just indicate who you are. But we do have a question from Tammy McLean in the chat, and she asks, several companies offer education assistance. What type of education assistance does the military provide after discharge for new careers, such as a registered nurse, lab, or surgical tech, etc.?
Oh my God, that's a great question, Ms. McLean. So I will say that the Army provides, in my opinion, one of the best educational programs in that GI Bill. Soldiers are given the opportunity when they first join the Army to invest into what's called the GI Bill. And then there's a much better technical term for that. But in essence, what they do is they take $100 from the soldier every month. That's going to be $1,200 for that first year. And that will automatically enroll them into their GI Bill, which is their education benefit. And so what that means is they're, depending on where they're living, we have what's called basic housing allowance. So, you know, long story short, the basic housing allowance is going to be much larger in areas like Hawaii, New York, LA, than say Tennessee or Texas, just because of the housing, the cost of living in those areas. So they are given what's called a basic housing allowance. So while they're attending school, they're also getting extra funds to sort of help supplement. If they're half time at school and they're not working full time, so that money sort of helps supplement whatever expenses that they may have post army. So with that being said, if they were interested in programs like RN Lab or Surgical Tech, they are welcome to attend whatever school that they would like to, or whatever training program that they would like to. They just have to make sure that it is an accredited and approved with the Veterans Affairs Education benefit, so that they are able to attend, not for free, but to no cost at them. So now, as it relates to those specific areas, that would be on the soldier or the veteran or service member to really do the research on what program is best for them. It's just like coming out of high school and going to college. What is the best industry that works for them? And as long as they are connecting that financial component, so that VA benefit, with whatever school they want to go to, then they should be good to go. Now, those benefits do vary based on reasoning for separation, but it's very extreme. What I mean by that is, if it is, like if you're getting dishonorable discharge, what that rarely happens, there might be some restrictions on that benefit. But for the most part, soldiers have access to that education benefit. And it's unfortunate that a lot of soldiers, and I should have got that number, a great percentage of soldiers or service members do not utilize that benefit. But I do hope that answered your question, Ms. McLean.
Thank you. And I'll encourage folks to put questions in the chat, or if you'd like to come off
Absolutely.
mute,
Yes,
please come off mute and ask, take advantage of this time with Anthony.
please do.
So I have a question about your events. And
Okay.
I had a couple questions. What would you say? So I noticed you have an event on October 7th and 8th, and then one in November. What's the difference between the job fair and the skills program fair?
Okay.
Who would you expect to attend those, or is there a difference in those?
So and it's those dates. I just wanted to correct you. Just those dates are 8th and 9th. I'm sorry. For October, and so the difference between the two would be that our job fairs are really geared towards hiring. We want to specifically connect with employers that are looking for candidates, and then we want to and so if soldiers were getting out of the army within the next 6 months or a year, they're already kind of connecting with that industry. The Skill Bridge on November 6th is specifically for training programs. So they're not necessarily hiring for candidates unless they are looking towards job placement post the training component. However, it is specifically for the career skills program or skill bridge. So one is the hiring, so that's us, and then the other is for whatever training program that they might have available for the CSP.
Okay, great. Thank you for that. And I
Absolutely.
took note of those dates, so we'll share those. I have a
Please.
question, and maybe you have some insight with your data. Oh, okay. Abigail asked a question.
Okay.
Are they able to use their education benefits with additional education benefits that a company can offer? So I'm assuming, like, can they use a scholarship or additional benefits in addition to the GI Bill?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I mean, so let me just say this. And I used to be a transition counselor here, and one thing that I used to brief to all of my soldiers is, if they set their benefits up just right, they can just go to school, and that's coming from a soldier who got out of the army as a single dad, two girls, house, car, and I was able to set everything up to where, with scholarships and the benefits, I was able to just go to school and focus on that. So short answer, Miss Abigail, yes, they can use scholarships. They can use. I don't, advise using like grants, because not grants. I'm sorry, loans. I do advise grants. We want grants, but loans, because why would you need loans if you have those benefits? But yeah, they can use whatever scholarship or grant on top of that benefit. Yes, ma'am.
Fantastic. Thank you.
Good question. Absolutely.
So it sounds like, and I don't know, I see Pat on the call and Mr. Shepherd and Dr. Hannah. Who else? I see several of our academic folks, and I'm wondering if you all have any insight or if you have experience with kind of advising or providing resources for your programs in regards to how folks can go to school that are transitioning military members.
This is Craig Shepherd. So any additional financial assistance, we're not a Title IV institution, so they wouldn't be able to get Pell Grants or other loans or anything. We do have a low interest loan company that does offer loans for those that are eligible. But other than that, the soldiers typically will come into our program as a post 9/11 Chapter 33, and they can get their financing through the VA.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Anyone else have anything to?
And I had a question too, Anthony.
Yeah.
Could you tell me what percentage of those 25 to 34-year-olds actually already have an associate's degree?
So that is a great question. I'm going to scroll back up to that slide because I did see in my. So I'm trying to see if I saw that number on my research.
Yeah, I may have missed it.
I don't think so. Okay, yes, here we go. So on that slide, 65, so 85% seeking immediate employment, da da da. So here we go. So 14% have bachelor's and 47% have an associate's or some college. So even that's a big gap between that 14 and 47.
Yeah.
So yeah, that we're looking at only 14% are getting out with bachelor's, and also, be aware that 14% are going to be those who are, higher or further along in their military careers. So we're talking about that E7 to E9. We're talking about those. Of course, any officer is going to have a bachelor's. So a lot of those that are getting out with bachelor's came in the Army with their bachelor's as well. So there's that.
Okay. Yeah, that's what we would be interested in helping soldiers who have at least an associate's degree, because there's two qualifying factors to take the national certification exam in radiologic technology. And we are hospital-based program, Nashville General Hospital, so we can only offer the certificate of completion from an accredited program. The other requirement is to have at least an associate's degree. So
that's awesome. And the reason why I say that's awesome, because associate's degree, they don't get the credit that they don't usually get a lot of respect on associate's degree. And I tell soldiers all the time, there's nothing wrong with getting an associate's degree. It is the opportunity for you to, of course, you're learning, you're building up that your list of degrees. Of course, don't stop there, but having a program or any type of outlet that the minimum requirement is an associate is quite encouraging for soldiers who are like, I have this, but I don't know what to do with it. I don't know where to go. I should probably just, get my bachelor's. Well, not necessarily. Perhaps you can, do that certification with that associate. So I'm happy to hear that.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else have a question for Anthony before I ask here we go. Abigail has another one in the chat. And so does Andrew. Okay. For the events that you advertised, are these events on base, and do they require any special registration requirements?
So yes, so the events that we are doing currently are on base. And so what happens is, so I'll kind of give you a little rundown of the process briefly, is that we send out, once we do through all the payment, and the reason why I say payment is because our quarterly events, and I should have mentioned this, our quarterly job fair events is a $200 fee that has not come to us by no means, but that goes to the venue, and it also includes 2 free meal tickets. But they're usually here on post, and we send out a final confirmation with all the base access information. So for those who can't get on post, how the best way to get on post when to start that process. But other than that, no, there are no other specific requirements other than the fact that we've met, we've talked, I've realized that this is a good industry organization for this for our organization, and we want to have you on. So if there was any issues, of course, you just let me know, and we can hash out any hindrance that you might have.
Great, thank you. Our next question is, have you seen or heard a lot of expressed interest in the healthcare setting? And if so, which parts of healthcare have they been expressing interest in? From Abigail.
Good question. I love that. So, as I mentioned earlier, I was a transition counselor, and so what that meant was I met with soldiers six times a day, of course, different soldiers, for either an initial counseling, which means that we sort of start the process, or a capstone, which means that we have completed and ended the process. And so with that, one of the questions that we ask is, what do you want to do, Bonita? What does the future look like for you? Where do you want to go? Where, location wise, job, finances, what does that look like, so that we understand what our role is, and to sort of be that liaison. So, however, I have not seen a lot of so the first answer to the question is yes. I've seen people who want to get into the healthcare industry, but the problem is they just don't know where to go with that. They don't know what those requirements look like, and some of the requirements are daunting to them. So they're like, okay, I gotta provide for my children. I have a spouse. I have a house. I have a dog. So that's where that idea of pivoting to an industry that pays the bills versus something that they want to do. So, and sometimes I've had conversations with soldiers. And I'm like, okay, that all, I ask, what do you want to do? Oh, I just want to, maybe work in government or find a job somewhere. It's like, okay, but what do you really want to do? What is, if you could have the job that you want, what would that look like? And that's when they get into, I would love to be a radiology tech. I would love to be, a medical technician. I would love to be in nursing or be a PA. Then that's okay. So let's connect you with that opportunity. Because one thing that I had to realize in the Army is that post-Army, I used to always call the civilian world like the promised land, because in some regards, being in the Army, you kind of feel like you are, you're under somebody else. You're owned by the Army, you're owned by the government. And so when you can look outside that gate and say, hey, I want to be outside that gate, I want to have to come to PT, or I don't want to have to do inventories or layouts or deploy. All that sounds great when you're thinking about, the civilian world. But when you get into that civilian world and you realize that, hey, the price of milk has gone up, when you realize that housing is no longer, an apartment is no longer $600-700, we're looking at $1,400 for a 2-bedroom. So when they start to realize that, oh, the Army actually, the benefits were just as great as the actual pay, that's where the anxiety comes in. That's where I don't know what I'm going to do, what that looks like. So I can't focus on that medical aspiration, because we've got to eat, we've got to provide. So getting to the nitty gritty of what they really want to do was always at the heart of what I did. And then once we found out, how can we make that connection, which is where I hope you all come in. How can we better make the connection between their desires of being in the medical field, whatever that might look like? And I also tell people that medical field is not just being a doctor or being a nurse. I think that's what society tells us. But there are so many components. There's an IT component. There's health administration. There's going to be the logistical. There's going to be that management, human resources. There are so many components in every industry. So, don't look at, I don't want to be a doctor. I don't want to, see blood. That's not what healthcare is. So also removing some of those stigmas, some of those ideas that society has placed in our mind is really going to affect soldiers and their decision into getting into that industry post-Army. I'm sorry, it's a long answer to your question, but yeah, there you go. There you have it.
Well, I think that's a really great thing. And
Mm-hmm.
Dr. Hannah has her hand up, but I'll just wrap up by saying, I really recognized when we met that you're really talking about people who are kind of similar in their transition in life
Yeah.
as someone who's coming out of high school, or someone who's starting to make those decisions, right? This is a total new step, a total change in their approach. And you have to re-expose them. I mean, they're literally exiting, as you mentioned. I loved you said, entering into this different world.
Yeah.
But a world that very much how military life is very foreign to some of us, civilian life can be foreign to them. And so
Absolutely.
kind of re-exposing them to those options and possibilities. Dr. Hannah.
Yes, we at TTU would love to talk to you about recruiting these that are transitioning. What would be the easiest way that we could get a hold of you through an email, a phone
So
number?
yes, so that the form I sent in, Ms. Thomas, I'm not sure if you were able to get that form or not, but that has all of our information
does.
on it. And so like I said, I'm Anthony White. So if you want to just give me a call, if you want to email me, we can set up a meeting. You can do it in person, we can do virtual, we could be at a restaurant. I love to eat, like I said, so we can wherever you wanted to meet. Because one thing that I want to do with meeting with organizations is really understand to make sure that they're a right fit. So if an industry, well, thank you, Miss Farrell, for my email. If there was an industry that a soldier wanted to get into, or I'm sorry, if there was an organization that came to us and that there are no statistical data of that being an interest, or no one has asked about that, then that may not be a good fit. And I have no problem saying, hey, this may not be a good fit. I might be able to resource you to a different organization that might help you. But I do believe that it is important to have those options available, regardless of where the soldier is. So to answer your question, many ways. You can always come, you can email, we can meet virtually or in person, whatever we can do to get the ball rolling and to cultivate this relationship.
Okay, thank you.
Absolutely.
Wonderful. All right. Well, this has been really great. I put Anthony's information into the chat,
Perfect.
but we will be sending out excuse me, a copy of the recording. We did have some folks that reached out and said they weren't able to attend, although they registered. So we're always happy, did record the call and your great questions. We'll also include the flyers that Anthony has shared with us, as well as his contact information and the others there at Fort Campbell. I just want to take a moment to say, Anthony, thank you so much for today. And thank you for your service and what you do for our military members. It's just, I know that it's a thankless job in a lot of ways, but we appreciate you. And we are working with Anthony on a potential health sciences and healthcare career activity for next year. And so we're very excited about that. And look forward to sharing more information in 2025. But please reach out to Anthony. And as you all can see, he is very passionate about what he does and excited about healthcare being a bigger part of that. So thank you again.
Thank you for having me. Thank you all for your time. I do appreciate this.
Absolutely. So I will just share that we have our apprenticeship part 2 webinar on Wednesday, September 25th at 2 p.m. I'll also share that flyer to you all. If you haven't registered for that, please go ahead and register. We'll be sharing the great work and additional information that extends some of our previous webinars, as well as a topic that was covered in our annual meeting. So thank you all so much for attending today. Thank you for your flexibility. Greatly appreciate this group. And again, thank you, Mr. White. We will look forward to working with you in the future.
Awesome. Thank you all. Have a great rest of your day.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.